A man sits in the dim light of his evening kitchen, the residual warmth of dinner fading from the air. He is surrounded by all the visible markers of success, the quiet trophies of responsible living. There are the contented sounds of his children winding down, the faint aroma of cleaning products, and the comforting, predictable silence of a suburban fortress secured for the night. He is the center of this world, the anchor, the irreplaceable pillar that holds the roof over everyone's head. His expression is one of calm assurance, perhaps even a slight, tired contentment, the signature smile of the modern family man who has delivered on his obligations. But if we were to peel back the layers of that carefully constructed composure, if we could use a philosophical stethoscope to listen to the rhythm of his soul, we would hear something horrifyingly discordant. We would hear the sound of a profound, agonizing internal rupture. We would hear the muffled, incessant, silent scream of a man who has sacrificed his highest potential on the altar of average stability. A man whose life is a masterwork of duty and a tragedy of destiny. This man, walking testament to the good life, is, in the eyes of Friedrich Nietzsche, a soul under philosophical house arrest. Nietzsche understood that the greatest burden on any human spirit is not external hardship, but internal self-imposed constraint, the decision to live safely, conventionally, and primarily for the approval of the surrounding herd. The family man, in this context, is the quintessential hero of the herd morality. He is praised, respected, and revered precisely because he abandoned the dangerous, chaotic pursuit of self-overcoming, the will to power, in favor of predictable societal roles, the reliable provider, the steady husband, the unmovable foundation. He achieved stability by deliberately extinguishing the volatile, burning furnace of his own unique ambition. This conflict is universal, hiding behind the closed doors of every successful neighborhood. It is not unique to one region or one culture. This conflict travels globally, hiding in plain sight. Tell us now, what city are you watching this analysis from? Let us see how wide this silent scream echoes across the map. The depth of this man's tragedy lies in the fact that his suffering is invisible. It cannot be quantified by debt or measured by stress. It is a spiritual starvation that only he can feel, and only he dare not acknowledge. The contract he signed with the world demanded that he trade his inherent right to self-creation for the collective safety of his unit, and so he wakes up every morning and performs the role perfectly. He dons the uniform of responsibility, steps into the market, and exchanges his vital energy, his irreplaceable time, and his intellectual capacity for the tokens necessary to maintain the perimeter of the fortress. He is trapped not by chains but by threads of gold, the obligations that are too precious to cut. He is too successful to complain, too vital to fail, and too beloved to abandon his post. His entire identity is now fused with his utility. He is valued not for who he is or who he might become, but for what he provides. And Nietzsche reveals the devastating implication of this bargain. When a man's self-worth is entirely tied to his utility for others, the moment his utility wanes, his self ceases to exist. We must understand that for Nietzsche, life's highest value is the affirmation of suffering and the continuous striving toward the Übermensch, the creation of one's own values and the mastery of one's own destiny. The family man, however, has become the antithesis of this ideal. He is the manifestation of the last man, the creature who blinks and says, "We have invented happiness." He seeks comfort, avoids confrontation with grand existential questions, and settles for small, palatable pleasures. He has found peace, but at the cost of his passion. He has secured comfort, but at the cost of his creative fire. The silent scream is the sound of his suppressed will to power, hitting the padded walls of his self-imposed prison. It is the raw, primal recognition that the life he is living, while morally commendable by the standards of society, is philosophically bankrupt by the standards of his own unrealized potential. He feels the weight of a destiny he chose not to pursue, the ghosts of alternate selves he murdered for the sake of stability. Look closer at the man who smiles, the one who always handles the pressure. His stoicism is not strength. It is a mask forged in obligation. His apparent calmness is not peace. It is the exhaustive discipline required to keep the internal explosion contained. He cannot express doubt because his doubt would dismantle the fortress. He cannot express ambition because his ambition would threaten the comfortable status quo. He must appear unbreakable, precisely because his family's security is entirely dependent on the illusion of his invulnerability. This leads us directly to the Nietzschean concept of resentment, but applied internally. Resentment is the bitter, hostile resentment felt by the weak toward whatever is perceived as stronger, usually channeled outward against the creative, powerful spirit. But in the case of the family man, resentment is turned inward. He resents the necessary compromises he made. He resents the societal structure that demanded this sacrifice. Most tragically, he resents the shadow of the man he might have been, the stronger, freer self, and this passive self-hatred corrodes him from the inside. He cannot admit this resentment because the cultural narrative dictates that providing for one's family is the highest form of self-actualization. To admit the pain is to reject the very life that provides his moral standing. Therefore, he must continually affirm the choice that killed a part of him. He must smile wider, talk louder about the joys of fatherhood, and work harder, even as the philosophical exhaustion grows heavier. This internal conflict generates a profound sense of isolation. The man knows he cannot share the true nature of his burden. If he admitted to his wife that he secretly yearns to quit his secure job and pursue a risky, artistic venture, he would be perceived as selfish, irresponsible, or immature. If he confided in his friends that his greatest fear is not failure, but the soul-numbing predictability of his success, he would be judged as ungrateful. Thus, he becomes the sole custodian of his internal scream. He is deeply connected to others through duty, but fundamentally disconnected from himself and from anyone who might understand the actual crisis of his being. Nietzsche challenges the moral superiority of the good man who chooses comfort over danger. He argues that the decision to become a perfect provider is often an act of cowardice, a flight from the terrifying responsibility of self-definition. It is far easier to inherit values, duty, stability, family first, than to create new ones, self-mastery, radical freedom, personal overcoming. The family man is rewarded lavishly by the surrounding society for his adherence to the established moral code. Yet this praise is precisely what entombs his potential. He is the tragic figure who, having acquired the power and capacity for true greatness, consciously chooses the smaller, safer path. He has mastered the market, managed risk, and navigated corporate hierarchies, demonstrating tremendous will to power. Yet he subordinates all that power to the defense of the mundane. His strength is used merely to fortify the mediocrity of the herd. The true weight of his obligation is the requirement to maintain the performance of happiness. He must never let the mask slip, because if the mask falls, the foundation cracks. His integrity is based on the continuous deception that he finds total fulfillment in the role of the provider. But fulfillment, for Nietzsche, comes only through struggle, risk, and self-transcendence, none of which are compatible with the stable, predictable life he is obligated to maintain. He looks into the mirror and sees a successful man, but he feels a trapped animal. He sees financial security, but he experiences existential anxiety. He sees public respect, but he knows internal emptiness. The silent scream is the sound of his true self trying to break free from the prison of his prescribed role. It is the cry of a caged lion who has been fed too well and too consistently, losing the memory of the hunt. We must now acknowledge the profound implications of this philosophical diagnosis. If the life dedicated purely to duty and the avoidance of risk is a life of spiritual suicide, how does the modern man reconcile his necessary obligations with his inherent drive for self-overcoming? The answer is complex, terrifying, and requires a radical reassessment of what strength truly means. It demands facing the fear that his family's dependence on him is also the single greatest obstacle to his own greatness. The true tragedy, as Nietzsche identifies it, is the profound self-betrayal. The man sacrificed his highest vision of himself, not for a villainous cause, but for a seemingly virtuous one. He is defeated by his own goodness, undermined by his own sense of honor. The silent scream behind his smile is the sound of a spiritual execution, performed meticulously, willingly, and applauded loudly by everyone around him. We have established the terrifying depth of this internal conflict. You are now aware of the Nietzschean cage constructed around the soul of the successful man. Your commitment to radical self-honesty is a powerful act. Type the phrase, "I hear the echo," into the comments now. Let the world know you recognize this universal struggle. Solidify your position here. Like this discussion now. Subscribe, because your journey toward true self-mastery begins in the depths of radical honesty. The foundation of this internal war has been laid. Next, we dissect the catastrophic mechanism that guarantees this man's defeat. Prepare yourself. We are about to expose the lie he tells himself every single morning. There is a mask every man learns to wear, not in the darkness of night, but in the blinding glare of the morning sun. It is the polished, unwavering smile of responsibility, the fixed expression of the successful provider, the man who has attained stability and comfort, the man who has won the game society set before him. But behind that seemingly impregnable facade, beneath the calm veneer of mortgages, car payments, and consistent attendance, rages a war so profound, so devastatingly silent, that its noise threatens to obliterate the very self it protects. This is not the sound of anger or frustration. It is the unending, muted existential shriek of the suppressed soul, the silent scream behind the family man's smile, an agony Friedrich Nietzsche mapped centuries ago when he described the agonizing process of self-betrayal necessary to earn society's approval. Nietzsche understood that life is fundamentally defined by the Wille zur Macht, the will to power, a concept routinely misunderstood as mere domination, but which is, at its core, the relentless, essential drive towards self-overcoming, growth, and the highest possible expression of one's potential. Every man, by the sheer biological and psychological necessity of being, possesses this furious internal engine, demanding expansion, risk, and the continuous ascent towards self-mastery. Now consider the modern family man, the pillar of the community, the provider. To achieve this admired status, he must first sign a contract with the societal machine. This contract demands not the exercise of the will to power, but its complete subjugation. He is required to transform the boundless ambition for greatness into the finite requirement for stability. The radical, dangerous path of self-creation is exchanged for the predictable, safe path of maintenance. The scream is born precisely in this exchange. The moment the self recognizes that its primary existential duty is no longer to become something magnificent, but merely to sustain something comfortable. This psychological imprisonment is often voluntary, even celebrated. The gilded cage of financial security, the soft chains of predictable routine, and the narcotic assurance of social acceptance are traded for the wild, demanding freedom of the spirit. The man finds himself performing the role of the successful adult, the reliable husband, the responsible father. But the self that existed before the performance, the self that dreamed of radical, world-altering change, is now trapped in the prompter's box, watching its own life unfold as a pre-written play. The silence of the scream is the ultimate testament to the effectiveness of the mask. It is so deeply buried that the man himself often forgets it is there, until a moment of pure, unadulterated solitude, a long drive alone, a sleepless 3 a.m. staring at the ceiling, allows the suppressed truth to momentarily pierce the facade. This repression, according to the Nietzschean analysis, does not simply disappear. It curdles. The frustrated will to power, denied its outward path of creative expansion, finds a perverse outlet. It metastasizes into resentment, a concept that defines the spiritual bitterness arising from impotence. The family man, outwardly cheerful and secure, begins to harbor a subterranean, cynical bitterness toward anything that represents the freedom he sacrificed. He looks upon the free spirits, the artists, the entrepreneurs, the ones who dared to keep the wildness of their will to power intact, not with admiration, but with a complex mixture of envy and moral condemnation. His condemnation is a defense mechanism. He must internally invalidate their path to justify his own comfortable cage. If the risk-takers are fools, if the dreamers are unstable, and if the self-masters are selfish, then his own choice to prioritize security over self-realization becomes morally superior. The subtle cruelty behind the smile, the passive-aggressive commentary in social gatherings, the quiet judgment of ambition, all these are manifestations of the scream turning inward, the acid of resentment dissolving the foundational joy of his existence. He resents those who still possess the courage to pursue the goals he was forced, by societal gravity and self-imposed duty, to abandon. The family man, in this context, risks becoming the quintessential last man, described by Nietzsche in Thus Spoke Zarathustra. The last man is the one who has found happiness. He has achieved comfort, safety, and security. He is complacent, moderate, and utterly devoid of passion for transcendence. "We have invented happiness," say the last men, and they blink, satisfied with their mediocrity. The tragedy of the family man's silent scream is that he knows deep down he is playing the part of the last man. He chose the small happiness of comfort over the difficult path of becoming great. His life is arranged to minimize suffering and maximize predictable satisfaction. He is safe from the elements, safe from financial ruin, and safe from the existential agony of true self-creation. But in ensuring this absolute safety, he has sterilized his soul. He has extinguished the necessary fire of struggle that Nietzsche deemed essential for the creation of value. He has become a manager of resources rather than a conqueror of challenges. The scream is the recognition that the comfort he built is not the reward for a life well lived, but the penalty for a life undared. It is the existential nausea of realizing that the man who stares back in the mirror is not the man he was supposed to become, but the man he was obliged to be. This realization brings us to the ultimate existential test Nietzsche proposed, the thought experiment of the eternal recurrence. Imagine, Nietzsche challenges, that a demon crept into your loneliest hour and told you that this life, precisely as you are living it now, down to the smallest detail, every pain, every fleeting joy, every regret, every forced smile, you must live again, and not just once but countless times forever and ever. What would be the family man's reaction to the eternal recurrence of his current life? Would he throw himself down, gnashing his teeth and cursing the demon for delivering such a terror? Or would he have experienced a tremendous moment in which he could say, "You are a god, and never have I heard anything more divine"? For the man trapped behind the smile, the whisper of eternal recurrence is the ultimate horror. To repeat the monotonous grind, the joyless provision, the constant suppression of the creative spirit, to live that internal scream infinitely, is a vision of hell. The fact that the recurrence of his life is viewed with dread rather than affirmation proves the life is fundamentally inauthentic. His existence, though outwardly successful and enviable, is rooted in denial and compromise. He built his world not on the affirmation of his desires, but on the negation of his true will. The scream behind the smile is the sound of the self utterly failing the test of eternal recurrence, desperately trying to change the past, knowing that the future holds only an infinite repetition of the same suffocating compromise. This self-betrayal is compounded by the cultural narrative surrounding masculinity and duty. Society rewards the man who subordinates himself entirely to the needs of the external structure. He is praised for his selflessness, his tireless work ethic, and his reliability. But Nietzsche warns that the highest virtue is not selflessness, but self-mastery, which requires a difficult, often solitary journey of overcoming one's own mediocrity and societal conditioning. The family man is caught between two impossible demands: the biological imperative to transcend, the will to power, and the social imperative to conform, the provider's cage. He sees the world he created, the beautiful house, the happy children, the comfortable routine, and he knows he cannot destroy it. Yet the price of preserving it is the permanent silencing of his own spirit. This duality creates a chronic, low-grade depression that is often misdiagnosed or simply dismissed as stress or midlife crisis. It is not a crisis of circumstance, it is a crisis of meaning, a protest from the subterranean self demanding its right to exist, demanding its right to become. The tragedy deepens because the man's perceived strength, his resilience, his stoicism, his ability to simply suck it up, is exactly what prevents his salvation. His unwillingness to show vulnerability or admit that the structure he built is crushing him means he cannot seek help, cannot redefine the terms of his contract, and cannot begin the process of self-creation necessary to silence the internal clamor. He is the master of his domain and the prisoner of his own success. He uses his duty as an excuse not to face the terrifying abyss of his own freedom. To move toward the Nietzschean solution, to silence the scream, requires an act of profound spiritual rebellion. The man must decide that his commitment to becoming himself is equal to, or greater than, his commitment to sustaining the external structure. This does not mean abandoning his family, but radically redefining his role within it. It means finding the courage to inject his suppressed will to power back into his life, embracing the necessary risk and pain that comes with self-transcendence, even if it disrupts the comforting symmetry of the life he meticulously constructed. The question shifts from, "What does society expect of me?" to, "What must I become to justify my existence?" This internal shift is excruciating, because the man must deconstruct the performance he has maintained for decades. He must risk the judgment of his peers and, perhaps most painfully, the temporary instability of the very people he sought to protect. Yet, the alternative is the lifelong, slow spiritual death caused by the eternal hum of the silent scream, the slow recognition that he allowed the greatest potential, his own self, to wither and die behind a mask of comfortable conformity. The path forward is not easy, and it is certainly not a return to past comfort. It is the painful, difficult, yet necessary path of self-mastery, the path where the scream is replaced not by silence, but by the fierce, affirming roar of a soul, finally set free to choose its own weight. We must understand the architecture of this sacrifice before we can attempt to dismantle it. The existential struggle is real, and we are all connected by this silent war waged daily in the hearts of men who carry the weight of the world on their shoulders while maintaining that perfect, unwavering smile. Tell us right now, where in the world are you watching this recognition of the soul's hidden war unfold? Understanding this profound conflict, the struggle to reconcile the boundless will to power with the necessary limits of domestic duty, is the first and most critical step toward liberation. Recognizing that the smile is a defensive structure, and the scream is the voice of the authentic self, demanding release means you are already beginning the process of self-overcoming. This content is designed to be the tool you need to examine the psychological contracts you have signed in silence. We know that the journey toward authenticity is isolating, but you are not alone in this profound act of self-discovery. If this analysis resonates with the quiet understanding of a truth you have long suppressed, affirm your commitment to yourself right now. Type the simple phrase, "The mask is heavy," into the comments below. This small act of written acknowledgement is a powerful step toward dismantling the heavy performance you carry. Commit to this deeper transformation with us. Become part of the community that chooses difficult authenticity over comfortable denial. Subscribe to the channel immediately, ensuring you never miss the strategies necessary to navigate the brutal terrain of modern existence. Hit the like button to signal to the algorithm and to others that this conversation, the one tearing down the facade, is vital and necessary for true self-mastery. Your journey of self-affirmation is about to enter its final and most challenging stage. In the next part, we stop merely diagnosing the pain and begin to explore the radical, challenging steps necessary to integrate the authentic self back into a life built on compromise. Prepare for the moment where we move beyond the diagnosis of the scream and focus entirely on the necessary painful action required to achieve affirmation. This is the conclusion where we finally address the question, what does the family man do when he can no longer afford to smile? The man sits at the head of the polished dining table, the morning sun catching the dust motes dancing in the air, illuminating the perfect order of his life. He is the provider, the anchor, the steadfast rock upon which the entire structure of his family rests. He is successful, measured by every standard society has ever devised. The mortgage is managed, the savings are growing, the children are achieving, the wife is comfortable. This is the portrait of stability, the ultimate aspiration of the modern social contract. Yet, behind the practiced, tired smile, there is the silent, internal screaming that has now lasted for years. It is not the sound of financial pressure or marital discord or workplace stress. It is the sound of the self realizing it has died in the process of becoming what others demanded. This is the central catastrophe that Friedrich Nietzsche diagnosed in the heart of modern civilization. The family man, the dutiful provider, has committed the most profound existential error. He has mistaken the comfort of obligation for the freedom of destiny. He stopped living for the will to power, the innate drive to overcome, create, and define one's own values, and started living for the collective's expectation. He is not a master of his domain. He is merely the highest functioning cog in the social machine. He trades his soul for the consensus approval of the herd. And Nietzsche, watching from the philosophical wilderness, knew that this perfect life was the perfect psychological prison. Tell me, what is the city or town where you are currently sitting, listening to this analysis? feeling the weight of these very expectations. Because this phenomenon is not isolated, it is the universal spiritual malaise of our age, and it requires a definitive, dramatic conclusion. The scream starts when the man realizes his moral system is a sham. The foundations of his duty, the idea that sacrifice is inherently noble, that providing security guarantees happiness, that self-denial leads to ultimate reward, are revealed to be hollow. Nietzsche called this the moment where the traditional source of value, God, metaphysical truth, objective morality, dies. When the family man achieves his perfect life, he looks around and finds no eternal meaning waiting for him. The promise was that the struggle would justify the outcome, but the struggle only produced more struggle, and the outcome feels like a gilded void. This vacuum is the birthplace of nihilism, not the aggressive, destructive type, but the passive, exhausted type that whispers, "Nothing matters, and I sacrificed everything for it." And here is where the silent scream is compounded by a darker, more insidious force: resentment. The family man cannot escape. He has too much to lose: the respect of his peers, the stability of his home, the affection of his children. He is chained to the roles he created, because he cannot blame the structures, since he built them, and he cannot blame himself, because he is morally good. The resentment ferments internally. He begins to subtly despise the very people and things he swore to protect. He despises the safety of the suburbs, the predictability of his routines, the softness of his life. He yearns for the danger, the chaos, the self-definition he abandoned. But instead of acting, he suppresses. He turns the knife inward, creating a psychological state where his internal aggression is perpetually at war with his external conformity. The silent scream is the sound of this psychic battle, the sound of the lion being forced to act as the camel, carrying the weight of conventional morality across the desert of modern meaninglessness. This constant performance of virtue, the endless projection of the contented, capable provider, demands a terrifying amount of energy. It is exhausting because it is fundamentally inauthentic. Every decision is filtered through the lens of, "What will this look like?" instead of, "What must I be?" Nietzsche understood that the highest form of power is self-mastery, the ability to legislate value for oneself. But the family man is constantly being legislated to. He doesn't choose his duties. They choose him. He internalizes the values of the newspaper, the neighbor, the HR policy, and the bank statement. His self-worth is extrinsic, built entirely on external validation, and this makes him brittle, fearful, and perpetually reliant on the approval he secretly resents. The climax of the silent scream comes when the man realizes that the only way to silence it is through an act of radical self-creation, the terrifying leap toward the Übermensch, the concept of the self-overcomer. This does not mean abandoning the family or burning down the house. It means fundamentally changing the source of his motivation. He must transition from living by the values of ought to living by the values of will. He must stop being the man defined by his duties and start being the man who chooses his duties, not because society demands them, but because they align with his highest, self-legislated ideals. This journey of self-overcoming requires 3 brutal steps, each one a death and a rebirth. First, the death of comfort. The family man must willingly embrace the difficulty of self-discovery. He must smash the idols of stability and predictability that have kept him emotionally numb. He must face the terrifying possibility that the things he thought were true, his career path, his social status, his very identity as the good guy, are lies he told himself to avoid the chaos of true freedom. The scream stops when the internal tension is released, and that release requires the courage to dismantle the golden cage he spent 2 decades building. Second, the end of resentment. This is achieved by taking radical ownership of past choices. Nietzsche teaches that we must learn to say yes to our entire life, to love our fate, amor fati. The man must stop viewing his obligations as burdens imposed upon him, and start viewing them as necessary conditions that led him to his current point of realization. He must forgive himself for his past conformity, recognize that resentment is simply displaced self-loathing, and re-engage with his life not as a victim of circumstance, but as the author of his future meaning. Third, the creation of new values. The family man must become the sovereign self, the one who decides what is good and bad for him and his purpose. independent of the marketplace or neighborhood consensus. If he works because the creation is meaningful, not just because the paycheck is needed. If he loves his family, he does so not out of duty, but because he has willed that specific bond into existence as a manifestation of his own highest values. This transition from reaction, responding to societal demand, to creation, manifesting internal will, is the true Nietzschean heroism. It is the moment the silent scream is replaced by the roar of affirmation. This process is not easy. It is the most difficult task a man can face. To stare into the abyss of meaninglessness and choose to create meaning anyway is the definition of existential strength. It requires an honesty so profound it threatens to shatter all existing relationships and expectations. But the alternative is to remain locked in the beautiful, gilded cage, smiling until the silence of the screaming self drives him to cynicism, illness, or quiet despair. The true strength of the man is not measured by the weight he carries, but by the weight of the values he chooses to create. The family man stops screaming when he stops being the sacrificial provider defined by others and starts being the self-legislating creator defined by his own defiant will. He doesn't need to conform to the ideal of the good man. He needs to transcend it. He needs to move beyond the shallow morality of good and evil and into the potent freedom of beyond good and evil. The smile then becomes genuine, a reflection of internal alignment, not external servitude. This realization is not just philosophy, it is urgent survival. The path to power, influence, and genuine respect runs directly through authenticity. You cannot lead your family, your company, or your life if you are fundamentally lying to yourself about who you are and why you endure the sacrifices. That internal lie will always leak out as anxiety, control, or passive aggression. We have now dissected the facade, exposed the hidden pain, and revealed the terrifying path to self-overcoming. The question remains, how do you translate this philosophical terror into daily action? How do you ensure your will, and not the world's expectations, governs your existence? Now is the moment of choice. We understand the depth of this challenge and the urgency of the self that demands to be heard. We are committed to providing the kind of deep, unflinching analysis that can genuinely restructure your approach to life. To show your commitment to transcending the herd mentality and truly embracing self-mastery, I want you to plant a flag in the comments right now. Your participation demonstrates you are ready to take control. Go to the comments and declare this specific phrase: "My will is my worth." That phrase is a promise to yourself and a declaration of sovereignty. Hit that comment button now, asserting that your self-defined meaning is the only currency that matters. And if this analysis has provided even a sliver of the necessary insight to stop your own internal screaming, then you understand the value of this channel. We are building a community of people dedicated to understanding power, strategy, and self-overcoming. Do not miss the next essential lesson. Subscribe immediately, because you are now part of a critical movement toward truth. Press the like button. Demonstrate that you recognize the gravity and necessity of this knowledge in a world drowning in shallow distraction. We know that understanding this crisis is only the first step. The next is the practical application of radical self-reliance. In the next video, we turn the lens to an equally vital and often misunderstood subject: how to create and wield power without ever becoming corrupt or losing your soul. We are going to explore the forgotten rules of genuine influence that separate the masters from the masses. Do not risk missing the knowledge that will fundamentally shift your ability to navigate the dangerous landscapes of modern life. Join us then, when we reveal the hidden architecture of true sustainable influence.